this webinar to explore the theory and practice of revolutionary relating and radical honesty. And this will be a chance for me to tell you some things about that, and for you to ask questions, and for us to let you know that we may be coming to a country near you. And I'm assisted by my lovely host, Yura. You better pronounce your name correctly. I can't do the whole thing correctly.
For those who struggle with languages and name, my name is Yura Glo. And for those who know where I come from, my name is Jurata Glodenita.
Yeah.
I'm from Lithuania, and I remember the first time I got to know you, Tabor. You arrived to Berlin 3 summers ago, or 2 summers ago. And this is how I got to know you and the revolutionary relating. Interesting fact, nobody asked questions regarding this webinar. And I would like to know whether you have prepared us something, or you would like me to come up with questions as you speak.
Well, I'm perfectly happy to, freewheel it, and any questions that you have, I'm sure would probably be edifying for others as well. So feel free to pipe in at any point.
So in this webinar, I would like to address radical honesty, your own experience in revolutionary relating in the upcoming events. And is that okay?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
In this hour, I want you to cover radical honesty and revolutionary relating.
Yes.
And your own experience.
Yes, they kind of blur together, because I lived and worked very closely with Brad Blanton for many years, the author of the book Radical Honesty. Ironically, I was teaching courses that I called Radical Intimacy before I ever heard of Radical Honesty. So we were destined to work together, which we have for many years. And of course, his style and mine are very different. We have different personalities, and I have my own sort of body of work that I mix into everything that I do. So I encourage you to just approach with an open mind and assume that you don't know anything coming in as to what I'm wanting to share with you. I guess a word about myself. I've been teaching workshops all over the world for 25, 30 years now. I'm trained as a psychotherapist, and the workshops are not really my job. They're more like my spiritual practice, my ministry. They're like my way of life that I'm on fire about sharing with people everywhere I go. And I feel just ridiculously blessed to get to do what I do, because I make a living just following this passion of mine and sharing it with others and seeing people's lives change. But as is often the case, I think, with people who are passionate, if not obsessive, about something the way that I am, my purpose sprung from my pain, When I was young in my family, the communication sucked. The communication was bad. First, my mom and my biological dad didn't know how to talk to each other about anything. And so things just got swept under the rug. And then my mom, not surprisingly perhaps, left my dad suddenly, took us kids with her, and started in with another guy. And that fellow, my first stepdad, was the other end of the spectrum, and the two of them just fought. Mostly he was the one doing the yelling and screaming and breaking things, and it was scary to me. I remember being sort of like up against the wall as a little kid and wondering what was going on out there. And then coming out and seeing things broken in the living room. So that was scary, and I vowed when I was young that I would create something different in my family. And I left home when I was 15, and I started having passionate, if not codependent, relationships right away. And lo and behold, I started retracing my parents' footsteps. I had a couple of relationships where not much real communication was happening at all. And then I had some relationships where it was that high drama that I had witnessed in my youth. And it was really painful to me to see that despite my best intention, I was having these painful interactions in my relationships. And soon a sickening realization kind of dawned on me. I realized I'd been in a bunch of different relationships with a bunch of very different people, and yet I was having the same kinds of problems, the same kinds of issues in each one. This led me to realize, oh, my problem must not just be finding the right person, because I've been with a bunch of very different people with these similar problems, and the lowest common denominator in all of those situations was me. So there must be some way that I was going through life saying I wanted connection, I wanted intimacy, but at the same time blocking it, preventing it through my way of being. And I realized there was going to have to be some way for me to stop that process. And I committed to, instead of being an angry or hopeless seeker after intimacy, consumer of intimacy, I would have to become a creator of intimacy that could make it anywhere with anyone. And that launched me on a journey that has been pretty epic. I lived in a Zen center for years and did lots of meditation retreats, studied with lots of different spiritual teachers, studied psychology, became a psychotherapist, did every freaky kind of workshop, personal growth community thing that you could imagine, and had lots more intense relationships. And it led me to this work that I now live and breathe and share with everyone. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me share with you what is really my life's work, and which I have seen impact so many people. So, what is radical honesty or revolutionary relating? Why do you want it? Why is it important? I think perhaps the first, maybe where we want to start, is part of why it's important is because dishonesty is the norm. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Dishonesty is the norm out there. Most people are not only sitting on some big secrets, like, their affairs, or, what they are hiding from their boss or their family or their whatever. There's that kind of what we might call the gross level of dishonesty, which tortures people. And then there's subtler forms of dishonesty, the way that we withhold what we're really thinking, withhold what we're really feeling, even from people very close to us. And it gets even deeper, where we are so practiced at dishonesty, we start hiding from ourselves. We don't even really know what's going on with us. We're not self-aware because we're in the habit of being dishonest in general. Now, again, that's not bad or wrong. That doesn't have to be a big thing. Maybe it's just like, oh, little white lies, or, oh, I'm just not sharing some things. I'm withholding some things to not hurt people's feelings. But what happens is when that becomes a practice, which it is for almost everybody in my experience, you start to suffer as a result. You become lonelier to the degree that you are withholding yourself. You become more stressed and depressed as a result of withholding yourself. When you're withholding yourself in those ways, even if somebody seems to care about you, someone seems to like you, someone seems to love you, it doesn't really reach you, because inside somewhere you're going, oh yeah, you like the little performance that I just put on for you. But if you really knew me, if I just let it all hang out, then you'd be out the door. So what happens is when you pretend, when you withhold, when you censor yourself, you automatically disqualify yourself from ever feeling loved. And on some level, we all want to be loved. We all want to give and receive love. But the process that drives this dishonesty I've been talking about is fear. Plain and simple. Fear of what will people think, fear of how will people react to me, fear of how will I feel, what will happen inside me if I start being open, if I start really sharing myself. Fear of being in the present with what's going on with me. And that fear, even though it's mostly unconscious, ends up running our lives, leading us around by the nose, without us even being aware of it. And our way of communicating with each other is unconsciously but purposefully structured in such a way as to make sure it's structured out of that fear. The way we communicate with each other is structured out of that fear, and it's structured so as to prevent too much intimacy. We think we want it, but we're like, I was. Oh yeah, I'd like intimacy. No. And our language supports that in ways that we don't even realize. We automatically communicate in ways that prevent us feeling too much, getting too connected, and ultimately having as much love in our lives as we could. For instance, when we get together, we start to have a conversation, and what do we talk about? We talk about other times and other places and other people. God forbid we should talk about you and me, here and now. How am I feeling with you at this moment? That's not something people usually talk about. Even when we talk about ourselves, people will do things to distance themselves from their own experience. Like I've found that not only in English, but in various languages, there's this pattern where people will say something like, you know how it is when you just try so hard to please people and you give them everything you got and you try so hard, but they don't appreciate your efforts, and then you just get disgusted and you just want to give up. Now, when that person is talking about you, who are they really talking about? They're talking about themselves, but they're trying to talk about themselves without really talking about themselves. Why? Because it's a more intense experience emotionally to say, I know how it is when I try so hard to please other people, and then I think that they don't appreciate my efforts, and I get so frustrated and disgusted, and then I just want to give up. That's a more intense experience for the speaker. And so we unconsciously communicate and be with each other in such a way as to avoid too much intensity. But guess what? When you avoid the momentary uncomfortable intensity of being honest and open with people, you also avoid all the intensity of love and connection and juicy aliveness that would be yours if you became more willing to wade through those uncomfortable moments together. So what radical honesty and revolutionary relating, as I call it, consist of is a whole new way of communicating, a whole new way of being together, that is structured, instead of colluding in avoiding too much intimacy in the moment, is a way of being together that's structured around helping one another become more and more present, more and more here and now with each other, and more willing to experience your own experience, feel your feelings, move through them, take responsibility for them, let them come and let them go, so that you can be an alive and ever-changing and ever-evolving creative being, instead of stuck in the little loops that you have been. Because here's the thing, while you resist some aspects of your experience, while you resist, oh, I don't want to feel that way, or while you resist it, it persists. It comes around again and again and again. So normal people get stuck in repeating patterns. The same old, they call it in English, you know. And this practice that I'm talking about, in my experience, is sort of rocket fuel for evolution, for getting out of those repeating loops and start to become a new person over and over again, and create new relationships and have more love and intimacy. And ultimately, the people who pursue this practice, in my experience, become more purposeful, more creative, more engaged in the world in a way that they are giving their gifts and making their difference. So,
Tabor,
yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
I like being alone a lot, and intimacy is scary. And being alone on my own and spinning in my own little wheel in my daily life, I feel safe and really comfortable. And every time I walk out and I meet people, I feel tense, anxious, and stressed. And I don't see the point. Why do I need this intimacy stuff that it bothers me. Intimacy is scary. I'd rather stay on my computer and work my work. That keeps me in this feeling of safe and comfortable and confident. Why do I need that intimacy?
Well, funny you should mention that, because I have spent a lot of my life as a hermit. So I know of what you speak. And as I said, I lived for years in a Zen center and did meditation retreats that consisted of staring at a wall for 14 hours a day and nobody talking to anybody for a week. Like, we're all together for a week and nobody said a word to anybody. So I have done much solo practice, and I highly respect it. I don't think for a minute that anyone that I have deep respect for solitude. I have deep respect for solo meditation. And at the same time, we are a very, very deeply social species. And there may be a few people who are just born to enjoy almost alone, solitude-driven life for the rest of their life. But a whole lot of the people who are alone in a way that is driven by the fact that they don't know how to be truly comfortable and enriched by company. And if someone has no desire for more connection in their life, no desire for more love and intimacy in their life, then they're not going to be drawn to this. But if someone has a desire for that, but also feels a little hopeless about it, well then you've come to the right place, and I can totally relate, because I'm teaching what I had to learn, which was about, like I said, how to become someone who can create intimacy. And frankly, I spend a lot of time by myself, and I'm not an extrovert. I'm definitely much of an introvert personally. Although, God bless the extroverts, but I do this because this is a way of relating to people that I can relate to. Chit chat and small talk never did it for me, and they still don't. I'm not a gregarious kind of party animal and chit chat maker, but this is about the possibility of dropping in deeply with people in a way that really feeds your soul. And even if you're used to feeling like a little reluctant to engage with people, this can be transformational and help you create a different kind of relating, one that does feed you.
Tabor, so how do I make myself comfortable around people?
How do you make yourself what?
Comfortable around people.
Ha 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 ha. You don't. The way that you do it, that's the glib answer, is you don't. The slightly longer answer is the way to become eventually more comfortable around people is to become willing to be uncomfortable around people. So you start, it's sort of like we are wired by millions of years of evolution to play this game that I would call, avoid the pain, avoid the discomfort, and maximize the pleasure in all situations. That's the name of the game. Unfortunately, that game starts to cause more suffering than it alleviates. Because when you are anxiously trying to avoid being uncomfortable and anxiously trying to make sure that you have as much fun and happiness as you can, then you start feeling thwarted by life and by other people. So, for instance, in the Buddhist paradigm, the point of life becomes, let's explore how I create suffering for myself. The Buddhists take it for granted that you are the one creating the majority of your suffering. You are responsible for it. You are creating it. You're not conscious of it, and you're not in control of it, so you're not to blame, but you are responsible. So the question becomes, can I be curious and compassionate with myself and start exploring how I create suffering for myself? So, applied to that previous question, I would be around people and start to notice exactly how I make myself uncomfortable. What am I worrying about? What kinds of fears are coming up from me in the context of trying to connect with people? And not only noticing it, but then being willing to speak it out loud with those people. Say, hey, can I tell you how I'm making myself nervous around you right now? And the people that you're most interested in are going to say, sure, tell me about how you're making yourself uncomfortable around me. And then you can say, I'm making myself nervous with you by worrying that. And then you can, I'm worrying that, what I was talking about a moment ago may sound dumb to you, or I'm worried that I'm talking too fast, or I'm worried that my breath smells, or I'm worried that you don't like the way I look, or I'm worried that you want something from me that I don't want to give you, or I'm worried that you're going to hit on me, or whatever it is. You can name those fears out loud, and in the process of naming them out loud, you'll resist it initially because, like I said, it's sort of an increase in intensity short term when you start naming that stuff out loud. Oh, I couldn't say that. Yes, you can. And when you say it, there's an increase in intensity for a little bit, and then there's a relaxation. Yeah, I got that off my chest. Will tend to make
David, you just froze for me. Yeah, I've lost David too. Well.
you more.
David,
All right. Back.
Are you back?
Are we? I'm back. I didn't go anywhere. Are you back?
Yeah, I hear you. We lost you for
okay.
You said.
Got it. So what I was saying was that over time, your level of by being willing to be uncomfortable on purpose and even publicly, your level of discomfort will go down. Because what you find is that there's a kind of a shame that drives that discomfort. And shame feeds on secrecy. Shame grows in the dark, in the closet, in your lonely room. But when you start calling shame's bluff by saying, yeah, I hear you, shame, but I'm going to speak, I'm going to reveal myself anyway. And what happens? Maybe you sweat a little bit, your heart pounds a little bit, but it doesn't kill you. It comes and it goes, and you feel better and closer afterwards. After a while, shame's weapon looks pretty pathetic. Go away, I've done this before. I'm not going to die. And so you start both being more and more willing to feel uncomfortable around other people and dissolving your discomfort around other people.
I have another question in relation to that. I have a tendency of an opossum. I freeze around people. And today I was walking in the park and a man approached me and he wanted to, and I froze. And I was smiling and looking cute and friendly when in fact I was scared. And then when he was talking to me and I said, I worry that you might try to hit on me rather than have a normal conversation. And he said, no, I'm just talking. I like to meet new people. And I was freezing the whole time. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, well, again, the more that you are able to bring compassionate awareness to whatever experience is arising in you, the more that over time it will dissolve itself. Part of what keeps the freezing in place is that I imagine at the same time as you're freezing, a little voice in your head is saying, oh no, I'm freezing. This is bad. How can I stop freezing? Even the voice, that asks me the question is the one of, how can I get rid of freezing? And ironically, the more willing you are to really approach your freezing in a fully conscious and loving manner, the more it will reveal to you whatever it needs to reveal, and the ice of your freezing will gradually thaw. But the more that you see that freezing as a problem, the more it ironically is maintained. Now, just out of curiosity, are these all your questions, or are we getting questions from other people that are coming through your mouth?
These are my questions.
Ah, okay, good. Well, I like your
questions. And my intention behind asking my questions is to bring out for people to check, is there anything that they would like to ask? So I encourage everyone to ask questions.
Yeah, I like your questions. And I want to just say to the viewing public out there that you are welcome to ask questions, either by writing something in the chat box there or by raising your hand. And if you raise your hand, then we'll call on you, and you and I will talk over the video.
Andrea is raising her hand in the camera.
What's that?
Andrea?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to ask, I really like harmony. I just like to be in harmony with people. And I feel it's like comfortable and friendly and respectful, because there's always two truths. There's a good one and there's a bad one. So I prefer to say the nice things than the other things that are disturbing me. What do you have to say about that? Because I get your point, but like I'm standing in front of a person, I'm like, because that's all my problem. I really know it's my problem. I'm projecting if I don't feel comfortable with somebody else. That's my persuasion. So why should I offend the person saying, oh, you know what, I really feel uncomfortable right now because you remind me, or you make me, you give me fear, I'm like in fear of people, that they say something rude, because I try not to be rude,
So yes, so I hear you, and I get variations on this question a lot. So you are not alone, believe me. And we tend to have it, the fear in the back of our mind tends to divide the possibilities into two. Either I will have harmony at the expense of full honesty, or I will have honesty with the cost of warfare, So this is about learning a third alternative to either one of those. First of all, conflict has a bad name for most of us. Conflict seems like dangerous, or seems like it will prevent harmony. But in fact, if you learn to do conflict really well, it's a totally creative force. And if you try to minimize conflict, you will tend to stagnate. The relationship will stagnate, or that's why, companies that are really creative and innovative invite very differing points of view to all be expressed. And that leads to more creativity. Whereas if the company is full of, at least what we call in America, yes men, people who just kind of like, yes, boss, whatever you say, then the company tends to stagnate. So the first thing is, you don't have to choose. You said there's two truths. There's the good truth and the bad truth that are happening at the same time inside you. I wouldn't put it quite that way. First of all, I wouldn't call it good and bad. I'd call it, pleasurable and painful, or comfortable and uncomfortable. And to tell the truth is to tell the truth about the whole experience. So I might say, you know, well, I notice I'm feeling, well, first of all, part of creating harmony rather than unproductive conflict is you can ask someone, you can tell them that you would like to talk to them honestly about your experience in the interest of cleaning something up or getting closer to them. And you can ask them, would you be willing to hear me about that? And if they say yes, then you're not inflicting something on them that they didn't agree to. You're creating something together. And so they say yes, and then you say, well, I noticed that I'm both a little irritated with you, and I'm also embarrassed about that because I really like you too, and I want to be close to you. But I'm not actually honest if I don't admit that this little thing that you do over here, I get irritated about. And I just want to name it so that I can quit hiding that, so I can quit avoiding you in this way. And the point when you say that is not to control them, it's not to get them to change, it's not to get them to do what you want. It's for you to let go of your attachment to having things your way, because everybody does. Everybody, if we get honest, again, everybody is petty. Everybody gets judgmental sometimes. Everybody wants things to go their way. And the most harmonious community we can have is the one where we say, oh yeah, we know, we all do that. Isn't that funny? But we also know we don't have a right to need to control each other and stuff. So you can say all that and then release it. And then afterwards you can maybe see, do you want to make any kind of agreement around that? Is this something you are interested in changing? Would you be willing to do this? But I'm not trying to control you. So that's just a real short crash course in what I could say is an alternative to the false dichotomy that we make between being honest or being harmonious. The truth is, I think you can create a much deeper kind of cooperation and love and synergy and connection with people through being honest, through learning to navigate conflict skillfully, than you can from just kind of being polite to try to avoid any conflict. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I like the idea of first asking whether the person wants to hear what I have to say. What do you think about nonviolent communication? Because I have the experience that I walk around the world and I'm trying to do it, but most people are not interested in this kind of communication. It's too complicated.
I appreciate you for saying that. And what I was going to say when you first said, what do I think about nonviolent communication, is that I don't know a lot about it, but I know that the way it's practiced by a lot of people ends up sounding very kind of jargony and kind of like a technique. And then other people who haven't joined the cult yet say like, what are you doing to me? That sounds, why that's weird, So in our cult, we try, there's some specific kinds of practices that may sound a little artificial to people at first, but in general, I try to teach people a way to communicate that, although it might be a little different than normal people communicate, it doesn't sound strange or jargony, sort of like what I was describing to you, when I was saying, can I talk to you? Because I notice there's something kind of bothering me and I'd like to let it go. then I'm saying, you know, I'm getting irritated with you about this thing that you've been doing in the such and such. And I also feel kind of nervous or embarrassed to tell you about that because I really do like you and want to be friends with you. You know, there's nothing about that that makes people go, huh? Like, it doesn't meet my universal need for blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I also know, to be fair, I have good friends who are nonviolent communication teachers who have internalized it and made it very natural. And I think that's great. But, and big, you know, nonviolent communication has done a lot of people a lot of good. And I've heard this problem a lot that you described about sort of the jargon being a problem or it being sort of too not very natural. Yeah.
Favorite? Andrea Schmidt, she just wrote, thank you. Smiling.
Uh-oh.
Thanks,
I didn't hear any of that.
Christian Brugger. Christian Brugger just raised his hand. Can you hear me?
I think you said Christian Brugger raised his hand.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrea, thank you for your questions. That was beautiful. Christian, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I feel nervous right now.
Christian was with us in Berlin. Christian will be joining me in Italy for 2 weeks of intensity down there. Yes. How are you, besides nervous, or how can I help you?
Yeah, I have a question. Something that appeared today, and it's around digital conversations. So I was chatting with a friend and arranging an appointment with her, and I noticed the way she was responding to me. I noticed a lot of anger. I noticed frustration, and I also noticed that I was like hiding that from her. Like I didn't want to write her. I had different excuses. I'm curious how to approach that, and I would like to make it a little bit bigger around like text conversation. I often feel like it's not a good thing to name it out loud, like on Facebook or in groups or whatever is happening to me. Like it seems like for me, so much is happening, and if I would speak all of that out, it would like compound, and I feel still dissatisfied because nobody's answering, and it's just such a different medium, and I haven't really found a good way to use kind of the practice in that area, and I'm just curious. I see pending, and I see speaking out is not really getting me. It's not really moving the experience.
It's a great question. And it's obviously so relevant in this day and age of, you know, chat groups and internet trolls and all of that business. And in general, I confess, you know, that I have certainly talked about emotions over writing, but in general, I like to say that written communication is the antichrist of emotional intimacy. It's the Satan of deep communication. And so the most effective way of doing the kind of communicating that we are talking about here is obviously face-to-face. The second best is like we are now in video calling, which is a beautiful, you know, technological innovation to help us communicate with people far, far away. Third best by far is telephone. Fourth best at the bottom of the heap is written communication. Now, sometimes it comes up, you know, partly it depends on how much trust you have with the person involved, you know, like if it's your good friend, your partner, your community mates in radical honesty and revolutionary relating and stuff, then maybe you say more about how you're feeling in writing, because you know that you're committed to getting together face to face and cleaning it up if that doesn't do the trick or something like that. So it partly depends on the level of trust you have with the person. And, you know, you can take sort of different levels. You can just say, okay, make a mental note. I'm going to talk to that person when I see them, and I'll just excuse myself for now. Or you could say, in writing, you could say, hey, could we jump on a video call right now? Or in writing, you could say, if that's not an option, you could say, I notice I'm getting impatient with this conversation, and I'd love to talk about all of this with you face to face.
Got it.
And if you're still writing, you can still apply some of the distinctions that we talk about in this work. Like, you don't write in such a way that is self-righteous and blaming and blah, blah, blah. You say, you know, I notice I am getting mad about the way that you wrote this, and I'm imagining that maybe when you wrote that, what you meant was blah, 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 but I could be wrong. So there's ways that you can, even in writing, take responsibility for your own experience. But yeah, we want as much as possible to prioritize communicating face-to-face, and secondly, communicating over video call, so that we don't create those messes. And frankly, people often would much prefer to do it in writing, because it's sort of like safer. It's like I was saying earlier about keeping a safe distance from too much experience, too much intensity. Oh, well, I'll just kind of say my little shitty thing in writing, and I won't have to face you, and I will be safely protected by my little computer screen. But what that does is it leads to people becoming less and less embodied, more and more in their heads. This practice is actually very much about embodiment. It's about communicating, not just with your mind, not just with your mouth, but with your whole body, feeling how you feel in your whole body as you are communicating. It's like an out loud meditation practice. But writing ensures that you're more and more in your head as opposed to in your body. So yeah, writing is really handy for some things. Inviting people to your workshop, it's fantastic. Inviting people to come get on a webinar, mass writing is very handy. But real communication feeds on face-to-face, real-time interactions.
Peter?
Thanks for bringing that up. Yes, thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
Next question from Paula that was asked some time ago. So how do you manage this when this form of communicating upsets, distresses someone?
When this form of communication what?
When this form of communicating upsets or distresses someone?
You stay with them. You stay with them. You again, part of what helps is that you engage in what I call consensual honesty, where you announce ahead of time, I would like to have an open, honest conversation with you in order to get through some feelings, or this might be uncomfortable, or I want to work through some conflict I'm feeling with you. Will you listen to me? Will you talk to me? Will you engage with me? And when you ask in that way, you're creating the context for a cooperative conversation. That said, there are some occasions where I recommend what I call commando honesty for someone. If one end of the spectrum is consensual honesty, the other end of the spectrum is commando honesty. So if someone was, you know, abused by their, and then they ask, what?
Could you repeat from the very, now you're,
Sorry, can be repeat from where?
from the beginning.
Okay.
The
Sorry
commando honesty. Rate the
Sorry
complex.
about these technical difficulties, people. Yes, at one end of the spectrum is consensual honesty. At the other end of the spectrum is commando honesty. Commando honesty, say someone was abused by their stepdad badly, and they've grown up now, and if they ask their stepdad to listen to them about it, their stepdad says, "I don't give a shit what you feel, stay away, whatever." Then I might suggest to that person what I call commando honesty. So they take me or somebody else with them, and they just go knock on the door, or they stand on the porch till they comes home, and they just say what they need to say for at least 10 or 15 minutes until the cops show up or whatever. In the extenuating circumstances, commando honesty can be a liberating, powerful act of a spiritual warrior. So that is not off the table. Most of the time, in the daily run of things with the people that we are close to, I recommend consensual honesty. So I ask for this conversation. If they say, not now, I say, okay, when can we talk about that? Hopefully, most of the time, people say yes. So that right there starts to build the trust about that person who might be upset about what it is you have to say, because they know you're in it together. Whereas if you just blurt something out on them without warning, they're more likely to feel hurt and victimized by your language. So you asked for the conversation, it was consensual, but still you got into it and you started speaking what was really true for you, and they feel hurt about it. They feel mad about it. That's understandable. And you say, yeah, I hear you that you are hurt and mad about that. And I'm sad that if this is true for you, I'm sad that you feel hurt and mad, and I'm here, and I want to keep listening to you. I want to keep talking to you about this until we come out the other side. And it's usually a matter mostly of commitment. Now, in general, it's also, with really tricky conversations, it's also much better to have the facilitation, the witnessing of a communication ninja such as myself, or to speak about your conflict in the company of others. I'm going to repeat this because most of us have grown up with the idea that conflict should be private, that you shouldn't air your dirty laundry in public, that's not polite or that's not nice, and so any kind of uncomfortable conflict or uncomfortable conversation should happen behind closed doors. I'm here to say no. Those kind of conversations are best handled in community with other people supporting you. Because when people are upset, when they're talking about stuff that's painful to them, they kind of go semi-unconscious. Their mind is operating under the influence of these big energies that are moving in their body. And if there are some people around who are not personally, who don't have an emotional axe to grind and aren't personally vested in any part of the conversation, they can help hold space for it. So that also helps. So facilitation, community support, consensual request for the conversation in the first place, patience and commitment. And when both people learn to communicate the ways that I am teaching, it vastly improves their ability to get through stuff, because most people are not, when they try to talk through the hard stuff, most people are not actually talking about reality. The number one cause of all unproductive conflict, the cause of 99.3% of all unproductive conflict, yes, I just made up that statistic, is not talking about reality, but instead having an argument over whose interpretation of reality is the correct one. And that kind of conversation is endless. A couple can have the same bad argument for 30, 40, 50 years because what they're arguing over is whose interpretation of reality is correct. Say, he walks in and she says, "You're late again. This just goes to show how inconsiderate you are, how inconsistent, how selfish, how it's all about you, and you don't care about my feelings. I've asked you about this many times before. Geez, I can't believe you." And he says, "No, that's not what it proves. What this shows is how rigid you are, how difficult it is for you to just go with the flow and trust, and you're so uptight and blah, blah, blah." That is an argument over whose interpretation of reality is the correct one. It has nothing to do with reality. It's all interpretations. That kind of conflict is pretty much endless. The hurt feelings that come from that one might continue for 30, 40, 50 years. But a conversation about reality would sound very different and odd to people perhaps at first. He walks in, she says, "I notice it's 7:30 and I remember you saying that you would show up at 7, correct?" And he says, "Yeah." And she says, "Okay, well, I notice I'm having some feelings about that. Will you listen to me?" And he's maybe like, "Oh, grumble, but he's, "Okay, yes, I will." She says, "Okay, I'm feeling kind of tight in my stomach and I'm hot and my heart is pounding. I am angry at you for showing up at 7:30 when you said that you would be here at 7. Now, the interesting thing about a statement like that is if instead of that, she used her first statement, which is like, "This just goes to show how inconsiderate you are," and blah, 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 his immediate response is to argue with her, to deny it. No, it's not that I'm inconsiderate, it's that you're uptight and rigid. But with this other statement, "I'm angry at you for showing up at 7:30 after you said you'd show up at 7. He's probably not likely to say, "No, you're not." He's probably not going to try to deny what she said, because what she said wasn't an argument about how to interpret reality. What she said was a description of the reality of her own experience. That's hard to argue with. Now, he may try to flip it back into an argument over interpretations of reality. He may say, "Well, you shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't be." Then he's going back into interpretation land. And she can say, "Oh, I notice I feel angry about you telling me that I shouldn't feel how I feel." She's gone back again to describing reality. So they're two completely different modes of communication. And the one where you're describing reality greatly helps you get over stuff and move through stuff, because feelings, the reality of feelings in your body is that they keep changing, they keep moving. Whereas your story about reality, your interpretation about reality can remain static. So you can choose to try to be right about something for that 30, 40, 50 years, but you can't maintain the same physical sensation in your body for 30, 40, 50 years. If you start really paying attention to it, it starts moving, it starts changing.
Taper?
Yes, ma'am.
Chaba has raised his hand. Would you
Yes.
like to mute yourself and speak up, Chaba?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And
Am
just
I audible?
1 second. Just 1 second, people. After this question, I'll stop briefly to say something about the tour that I am kicking off here and ways that we can connect face to face, which is, of course, like I said, my favorite. And then there'll be a little more time for questions and answers if you like. All right. Chaba, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Just one quick
where are you?
question. I'm in Italy. I'm on the seashore.
Ah, sweet.
Uh, it's a noisy bar. Tell me if it is too noisy. I try to overspeak the music.
I
All
hear
right.
you.
So you said consensual honesty. You still engage in a conversation with someone who doesn't want consensual honesty, who prefers to play roles and protect him or herself in a certain way. So, I mean, it's not commando, honestly, for sure, that you would suggest, but would you engage in a playful kind of conversation? Would you maintain the relationship in order to maintain the relationship and not to force or enforce honesty?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good question. And first of all, a funny thing happens in the course of workshops and stuff, because what I'm actually teaching in the course of the workshop is, as I say, an out loud meditation. And as you get better and better at this out loud meditation, then the way that you navigate through life becomes different. Instead of having a rule book in your mind about, okay, this is how I approach this situation, and this is what I do in this situation, and this is my policy about that, you start becoming more and more intuitive and more able to respond to the moment in the way that the moment is inspiring you to respond. But that's a kind of a high level skill. And so naturally what happens in the context of workshops or situations like this one is that people are asking for a policy. Well, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in that situation? It's totally natural, and it's part of my job is to answer those questions. And I'm happy to answer those questions. But I also want to point out that no answer is a one-size-fits-all. It all depends on what's going on with you, with that other person in that moment. So, with that massive caveat, that I hope over time you throw all my advice out the window and just are divinely inspired Zen master in the moment. With that person, you say, so can I be honest with you about, what I'm experiencing right now? And they say, oh no, let's not. Let's just be flippant. Let's be friendly. Let's keep it polite, or whatever they happen to say. Then you could say, would you be willing to tell me about how you either are afraid of or disapprove of honesty? I'm really curious. And would you like to have a conversation about each of our feelings about honesty? So you could invite them into that kind of a conversation. And if they said yes to that, then you could start to go deeper, like what's the resistance, what are your concerns, and blah, blah, blah. If they keep, engaging you, but engaging you flippantly, then maybe you start choosing to just be, if not commando, you choose to be honest without as much permission and say, okay, well, right now I'm imagining that you're trying to, tease me, or I'm imagining that statement's actually sort of passive aggressive, So it's not, if they're choosing to engage you the way that they choose to engage you, especially if you feel like it's kind of, provocative, you can still choose to engage them the way that you choose to engage, which is honest. And sometimes the end of the conversation for me is, well, I'm really committed to a certain way of relating that's really important to me. And I get the feeling that you want a different kind of relating, and that's fine for you, but it's not fine for me. So I think maybe we just kind of want different things. And if that changes, feel free to let me know that you want to explore an honest conversation. Be happy to try it again later. In the meantime, I think I'm going to let you do your thing and do my thing. That's just my free associating on the question.
All right. So in short, can I get that instead of keeping this on my side,
I'm sorry.
her in the decision?
I didn't get that.
Instead of deciding on my own what to do with this relationship, let her be involved in that decision.
Yeah. You can say, well, gee, it seems like we want different things. I know I'm really committed to honesty. It seems like you're uncomfortable with it, and maybe you want a certain other way. Maybe you could clarify what it is that you think you want, and we can see if we have common ground or not. Uh-oh. Okay, I'm not frozen. He's frozen, but I'm not frozen. Okay. And thank you for all that, Chapa. Thank you. That was great. And I sometimes tell the story of I had a therapist, and I started getting really intimate with the therapist and telling him that I wanted him to be intimate with me and really open and honest. And I loved his response. He said, wow, that's really cool that you know how to do that, that you want to do that. And I hear how you want that from me. And I really admire that. I value that. I appreciate that. But I don't think I really know how to do that very well. And I imagine you would be better served by finding someone who does, especially if you're paying for sessions. So I want to support you in finding what you truly want elsewhere. So it's probably time for us to end the therapy. And I totally felt loved by him kicking me out the door. It was beautiful. It was the best part of the therapy, was how he ended it. And I like to say that I wish all relationships were like that. We come together, we connect, we do the dance together that we are called to do together. And then if we reach this point where there's a fork in the road and we realize we start to want different things, then we bless each other. We say thank you for everything we've shared, gratitude. We get over it. We let go of whatever lingering grudges there are so that we can be in a place of appreciation and gratitude, and then bless each other on our way to find our next connection or emotional nourishment.
Tabor?
Yes.
Anya asked you a question, then Chaba asked you a question, and you answered the question for Chaba and also for Anya, and she's thinking, she says thank you from all her heart, and then she says thank you from the bottom of my heart for the story, Tabor.
Oh, beautiful. You're very welcome, Anya. Thank you for your thanks. Now, before we go on with any more questions, because I could probably do this all night, but other people will start fading. The excuse for this webinar was that I am kicking off a tour around Europe. We just finished Berlin, which was fantastic. We had a weekend workshop here in Berlin. And from here, I'm going for a couple of weeks in Italy, down there closer to where you are, Chaba. I don't know if I'll have the good fortune of bumping into you in Italia, but that's where I'm headed. And first will be a 9-day retreat, which is sold out, I believe, followed by a 7-day intensive retreat that's intended for people who have already done some workshops. If you consider yourself an alumni, you feel like you've started to get the hang of this, but want to go deeper, then you could join us for that 7-day retreat in beautiful Italy at a villa that we have out in the country with a pool and all such goodness. From there, I'll head up to Lithuania, Yura's home country, where we had a beautiful workshop last year. I was very impressed by the Lithuanians, by the way. I thought, oh, Lithuania, they'll probably just think this is pretty strange or something like that. But we had like 60 people at the Friday night and like 30 people for the whole weekend. And they dove in deep. They were doing the work. They were taking the risks. I was touched and impressed and moved by the quality of their practice. So from Italy up to Lithuania, from Lithuania to Vienna, I believe, Vienna, Austria, from Vienna, another weekend workshop in Hamburg, Germany, then over to England. And we may actually be creating a London workshop on short notice. We tried to make one earlier that didn't come through. So we definitely have a workshop in Northern England in the area called Newcastle or close to Newcastle. But we are also potentially at the last minute creating another England workshop in London. Then we'll be back to Berlin, where I'm going to do another workshop, August 12th and 13th, right after
Just
my
after your birthday.
What's that?
Just after your birthday.
Right after my birthday, the day after my birthday. And then a couple days after that, we'll have a 5-day extravaganza out in the country, again for alumni, for people who've done a workshop before. And this will be a community building kind of workshop and inspire a lot of co-creativity, people asking for what they want, giving each other. What was that? Okay, I guess that was background noise. Yes, we will cap it all off with this 5-day retreat in the country out at Busso or something like that. Busso, B-U-S-S-O-W, I think, out in the country of Germany, an hour or two from Berlin. So, and after that, I head back to the US of A. So I would love for any of you who are on this webinar from Europe to join us at one or more of those stops and get to meet you face to face and dive in deep, because obviously a webinar like this is only scratching the surface. It's trying to get you excited and inspired. So I invite you to notice right now if there's something about all of this that we've been sharing, all of this that I've been talking about, that calls to you. If there's something about it that some part of you recognizes and says, oh yes, that rings true for me. And even if it does, there may be other ways in which you're kind of like, but. You may be nervous at the same time. You may have reservations at the same time. That doesn't mean it's not for you. In fact, if you have that inspiration, ooh, that could be rich, then often the very next thing that happens is some kind of fears or reservations pop up. That's a clue that there's something there for you to explore. So if that's you, either wholehearted enthusiasm or conflicted enthusiasm, then I invite you to either come join us or get in touch with me about your further questions. If this just doesn't speak to you and it's like, nah, then God bless you and thank you for your time. Certainly not trying to talk anyone into this. This is not the path for everyone, but for a whole bunch of us, it is so rich. I cannot tell you. I started down this path many years ago, and I won't lie, it was difficult at times. But now it is so rich, and you could not pay me enough money to want to go back to my former way of being. And so, yeah, if this calls to you, follow that curiosity. Okay, another question or two before we quit. Is Fiona raising her hand? Fiona's raising her hand in the old-fashioned way.
Unmute yourself, Fiona, and
Can I unmute her? Yeah, there. Fiona, how are you?
I'm good.
Fiona, wait. Fiona is our organizer up there in Northern England. In near, where is it? It's near Newcastle. There's another name for it.
It's in the Pennines. It's in this national park. It's gorgeous. It's really fantastic.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona, for spearheading the workshop up there. These workshops happen. I feel so blessed. These workshops happen through the inspiration, the work, the initiative of people like yourselves all over Europe. Europe has organized a whole bunch of workshops for me. Fiona just took this one on. Tulia, who a lot of you know, has organized a bunch of workshops over here. I just feel so blessed and so thankful to all of you who helped me share this work. Like you, Fiona.
Well, and I want to thank Andy, because I was looking at these places and Andy was like, you have to find somewhere really beautiful. So it inspired me to find somewhere really beautiful. Yeah. And I'm really happy because 2 of my friends are on and I want them to do this with me.
Beautiful. I'll be on my best behavior.
Well, don't, because we like a bad boy.
Okay, I'll be on my worst behavior.
Okay. Now, so I want to ask you just a practical thing. I did this, well, actually there's 2 things. I did this silent meditation and I fell out with 2 people that I didn't even speak to. So what I realized is a lot of it's just me and my reaction. So I want to learn.
I'm sorry, say that again. I didn't quite follow that. You did what?
I did a silent meditation.
Uh-huh.
And I fell out with, there was 2 real bitches there who didn't like me. And we didn't even say one word to each other.
Uh-huh.
So, so much of what goes on has got nothing to do with any other human being except yourself.
How did you fall out with them if it was a silent meditation retreat?
Because one of them
punching each other, or
because I'm naturally looking for people to diss me, or because what it was about me.
Right. So, but when you say you fell out with them, you don't mean you actually argued.
No,
you just mean
just in my head. Yeah.
You started hating those people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, I understand. So what would be really, really interesting is if you were able, in in a serious spiritual community, because like I say, I have been in the Buddhist spiritual community, which is more silent meditation retreats, but in the kind of spiritual community I'm creating, you can say to those people, wow, I'm really curious about how I am making myself so angry about you and at you. Would you be willing to explore that with me? And if they were a similar spiritual practitioner, they'd say, yeah, I'm curious about it too. And then you start to dig into, what is it? Is it the way that she breathes? Is it the shape of her eyebrows? Is it the way that she moves? Is it, because there's these triggers that are simple little things that you see with your eyes or hear with your ears that are enough to trigger all these old programs, all this old conditioning, all these traumas from the past that you carry with you. And that's part of how we take responsibility for all of these emotions that come up and not take them too seriously, is we get that all of us are little emotionally reactive machines. We just get set off by all kinds of different things. And that's unique to us, as you say, it's an inside job. So like somebody standing at the front of the room and they say whatever they say, however they say it, and there's 4 of us sitting there listening, and all 4 of us have completely different reactions. Oh, isn't he charming? The other one's, how obnoxious. The other one is like, what a phony. And the other one is like, I want to marry him. So what is that? It's all of this conditioning that we carry with us that gets triggered by things we see with our eyes and hear with our ears. And that's actually part of this work, is starting to notice, what are those triggers? What actually happens in the world that we then react to? That's what I meant about having a conversation about reality and the description of reality. There's some sensual reality which triggered my emotional reaction.
Mm.
But here's the thing. It's a spiritual pitfall, a spiritual bypassing. Some people will say, yes, of course, it's my trigger, it's my experience, I'm the one who creates all my own feelings. Therefore, why would I go ahead and bother anyone else with my shit?
Yeah.
And the idea is, therefore, I should just be nice to everyone on my face and know that inside I hate their guts and I'm trying to figure it out. In my experience, that way doesn't work. In my experience, it's subtly based on fear. It's subtly or not so subtly based on the fear of feeling ashamed of being so petty or angry or something like that, or fear of them getting angry back at us, or all the kinds of messes that we think might happen. So once again, like I was saying to Andrea, the fear-based mind creates a false dichotomy. It says, either I take responsibility for my own shit and keep it to myself, or I share all my shit with everybody else and they get blamed and it's a mess, when in fact there is this third alternative, which is I take full responsibility and I invite you into an inquiry with me. I invite you to do the dance of deeper intimacy in the interest of us healing some things, moving through some things, and creating more connection than we assumed was possible. So that's the art. That's the art, is that you are honest and you take responsibility. You are open about all of your emotions, all of your passions, all of your reactivity, but you also take responsibility for it. It's not blame. It's not trying to control someone else. It's a daring act of self-revelation. It takes courage to do this work well. It should feel risky for you when you're being really honest. That's part of the clue. If you're just sort of like being righteous and telling someone where to get off, you get this kind of cheap thrill out of it. There's this kind of righteous indignation. There's this sort of sadistic pleasure that you take and like, fuck you, I showed them. Whereas if you're really being open and honest, it's edgy for you. I feel exposed. This is out here for me. Even if I'm angry, it's possible to be vulnerably angry. I'm so mad right now. I'm so mad and I'm hurt about the way that you said that. And I imagined you were looking down on me and you're feeling yourself vibrate with all that feeling. That's a vulnerable experience. That's not the same as being self-righteous and sadistic.
Faber, Andrea is asking, or she made a statement with a question mark at the end, that is only possible if the other person has the same understanding, ... question mark. I'm not sure whether that's a statement or a question.
No, it's a good question. I think I will interpret that question as, is this kind of communicating does it only work if the other person's on the same page with you? And the answer is no. The answer is, it's definitely more pleasurable and richer if you share the practice, and that's why I want to create ongoing communities of practice. And I think that ongoing groups of people who know how to communicate in this way will change the world. But that doesn't mean that you can't practice with anybody and everybody in a couple of ways. One is getting good at this way of communicating increases the chances of you being truly understood by anyone, because you get better and better at revealing yourself and describing your experience out loud. It increases the chances of anyone getting a little window into your soul and understanding you better. And they may open up more in turn. So there's that. But also, sometimes, even though your ideal goal would be that you have a deeper relationship with this person, that it opens up new possibilities between you, that doesn't have to be your goal. If that's not possible, then sometimes your goal is just self-liberation, taking care of yourself, not at their expense, not like you leave them battered and bruised and bleeding in the gutter, but you communicate yourself so thoroughly, you name the truth of your own experience so well that you feel different as a result. You took care of yourself. Because whenever you send someone a communication like this, you send a loud message to them. You send them a lot of information, a lot of potentially potent information for them to receive. But regardless of how they do or don't receive it, you send an even louder message to yourself. Because the way that you communicate with other people sends a very loud message to yourself. If the way that you communicate to other people is by withholding and not communicating, or, apologizing for everything you feel, or blah, 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 then you send this message to yourself of, self, you're not important. Self, hide yourself. Health, self, you're something to be ashamed of. Self, I don't approve of you. Self, I'm going to keep you in the closet. Whereas when you communicate in the kind of way that I'm talking about, you send this message to yourself that's like, self, I love you. Self, how you feel is acceptable, worthy of understanding and compassion. Self, I love you enough to stand up for you even when you're scared. Self, you are lovable. So you can walk away from a conversation that on the outside, somebody looking at it, they would say that was not a successful conversation because the other person, you know, was just defensive or didn't apologize or whatever. But yet you can walk away from that conversation feeling empowered. Like, yeah, I said what was true for me. I feel good about sticking up for myself. I was scared or I was guilty or I was whatever going in, but I didn't let that stop me. I said what I had to say. I said it cleanly. I said it honestly, but not cruelly. And I feel good about that. Sort of like if you know, went and climbed a mountain and then you felt great about reaching the top. So yes, doing it with other people who do understand and are committed to the practice is lovely and is ideal. And doing it with people who don't understand the practice but still care about you and arrive at a deeper relationship with you is wonderful and fully possible. And even doing the practice when the other person doesn't get it at all and doesn't, you know, you don't have a deeper relationship as a result, you still have a deeper relationship with yourself as a result.
Tabor, Christian just wrote in the comment, I appreciate you for saying invite others into the dance to heal. That's so empowering and liberating to me, and it inspires me to do more of the practice, especially around anger. And
Beautiful.
I see Anya and
Who said that?
Christian.
Ah, beautiful.
And then I see that Anya and Andrea are hooking up in making a practice group.
Beautiful. Beautiful. There you go. The virus is spreading. It's contagious.
And I want to remind that
what's
we are
that?
past the time. I also want to remind that we are past the time of the webinar, and I would suggest.
Oh, did we say we had an end time? I didn't even know what the end time was.
7 minutes ago, 8 minutes ago.
Okay.
We're in Germany here.
Okay. All right. Well, I will release people momentarily. I hope that some of this has spoken to you. I hope that some of it creates an excitement or an inspiration in you, a quickening of your spirit, and that you will feel inspired to pursue it further, either by coming to one or more of the workshops that we've been telling you about. And is there, where's the best place for them to go for that schedule?
As I imagine right now, Anya and Andrea are looking for practice partner. So
right, but I mean, where's the best place for people on this call to go see the full schedule of workshops?
I imagine that we have their email when upon their registration, we receive their email and we can send an email.
Okay, great. So we'll either send that to you automatically, or if there's any, if you have any curiosity, just reach out. We'll be happy to provide you with a full workshop workshop schedule of events. And or if you're sitting on the fence, feel free to reach out to me personally on Facebook with any questions that you have. And you know, this I won't lie, this way of being that I'm talking about is not a quick fix. This is not like the 3 secret keys to a better love life or how to spice up your marriage. You know, this is actually much deeper than that. This is the possibility of a new way of life. This is a spiritual practice. This is a way of being with each other that is, as I call it, revolutionary. Revolutionary, and I put a slash after the R because it's both revolutionary and it's evolutionary. So it's about growth and transformation. And frankly, at this point, I don't think that kind of transformation, that kind of evolution is is optional. I think it's getting pretty mandatory, at least if our species is going to survive, let alone thrive. The old way of doing things, the old way of communicating, the old way of doing conflict is bringing us, as you all know, to the brink of major world catastrophes. And so I think the next evolutionary leap required of our species is learning to communicate.
For me.
Say what?
I lost you for the last 8
Okay.
seconds.
I think maybe just you lost me because I saw other people still moving, but we'll see. I think the next evolutionary leap required of us as a species, if we are to survive, let alone thrive, is to learn this new way of communicating, this new way of being together. This is like love in practice. This is like, because you frankly, you cannot have love without honesty. You cannot have love without truth. And dishonesty with ourselves and with others has brought us to the point that we are at. And learning to really love is hard work, and you have to face fear, and you have to feel your way through pain. And I won't lie, it's a commitment, but it's so richly rewarding. Once you really step on the path, it's the dividends, the rewards are huge and enormous, and I can say that from my own personal experience and in the lives of thousands of other people that I have been with around the world. So I hope you will join us. Can we unmute everyone en masse so that they can all say goodbye at the same time, and we'll hear the cacophonous, the glorious cacophony of, oh, nice view there, gentlemen. Nice view, thank you.
Thanks, David.
You look beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye, beautiful people. Ah, good to see you, sir.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
Andy.
Thank you from the
Andy's
bottom of
helping
my heart.
us with English
Thanks,
too.
everybody.
Thank
Bye
you very
bye.
much.
Hope to see you in real life.
Goodbye. Good job. Good job.
Don't go. Oh.
What a glorious mess.
Wow.
A symphony, a cacophonous symphony of humanity.
Wiedersehen.
Bye, Susanna. I love this.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Make it more often. Make it regularly.
Yeah, let's do
Yes, we
more.
will.
This is a
We
good
will
idea.
make it more often. Thanks for saying so. We now have the technology. We will make it happen. What a glamorous shot you got going there, Susanna. You got sun streaming through the window there.
Yeah. Perfect Berlin evening.
Oh,
Sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, I see your name, but not your face.
All right. Bye. Bye, guys. Have a nice
Bye.
evening.
Ciao.
See you.
Adios.
Thanks for coming.
Au revoir. Bye, Paula.
Thanks for making it
Bye,
possible.
Love
Paula.
your dog, Paula.
Yeah,
Okay.
gigantic.
Oh.
Bye, Christian.
Goodbye.
Bye, Leonid. Lenin, or however I say it. Bye, Ellen. I see you. Bye, Ellen. All right. We did that. I guess I'll stop the recording.